All right. Today we have on Tim Reeser. Tim, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, Dan.
Okay. So, Tim,
Thank
co-founder
you, Tim.
and CEO of Lightning eMotors, a company in the EV space that designs and customizes electric commercial fleets that's going public via a SPAC, which is GIK, Gig Capital 3. How was that? Did I miss anything or you have anything to add?
You got it.
All right, man. Well, it seems like you've been fascinated by electric vehicles most of your life, going back to the early 90s when you won the Ford Hybrid Electric Vehicle Challenge in college. What about electric vehicles piqued your interest, and how did that eventually evolve into Lightning Motors?
Certainly. So I'll give a little bit of clarification. Actually, back in 1990, they were natural gas vehicles because so alternative fuel vehicles. But so I'd always wanted something that was both innovative. I'd been a car guy my whole life. I built hot rods when I was in high school and college, and so loved cars, but wanted to do something innovative. And when you look at alternative fuels, whether back then natural gas or now electric vehicles and kind of hybrids along the way, the opportunity to make the vehicle better, not just sustainable, but better, it always intrigued me. And even today, I'd say that's the biggest reason I love the company. A lot of people assume it's because of the sustainability, and certainly I am passionate about making a difference. But I also love the fact that the technology truly makes a better vehicle. The vehicles are more fun to drive. They're much better to ride in. All the aspects that make it truly better transportation. And so as a mechanical engineer, I love that part of making a better product, an exciting product and innovating. And that continues to pique my interest. And there's a lot of opportunity to continue to innovate in this space. And that's why I love it.
Yeah. So kind of playing off that, you said it's a better ride. Can you expand a little bit on that? Like if I know the difference between riding in, let's say, your van and just a regular Ford van? Like what would be like one of the main differences you think?
So night and day. The first one is noise. And this seems not like it's not that big a deal, but when you think about the amount of time most people spend on their phone, if they're riding in a van or would like to spend on their phone riding in a van or driving in a van or talking to someone next to you or someone else in the vehicle, that noise makes a very significant difference on the comfort long-term, medium-term, and you notice it immediately. Now, sometimes it's a little spooky, even on some of our big coaches. When that coach, one of the drivers was telling me, normally if you pull up to a stop sign and you don't hear that rumble and feel the rumble in the back, it's broke down. So he's like, it takes a little while to get used to the fact that it's eerie. There is no noise, no vibration. But from both a passenger and a driver, you notice it immediately. Some of the other things, because they're single speed transmissions, we've all kind of gotten used to when you drive it, you have to hit the throttle until it shifts down. You no longer have that. You have a very linear throttle, very predictive and very, very noticeable. And then the other thing people notice a lot is regenerative braking, meaning you let off the throttle and the vehicle comes to a stop. Not only is that obviously very compelling in terms of not having to replace the brakes as often, but most of the drivers in the first 5 minutes, they kind of say, hey, this is weird. But after about 10 minutes, they much prefer, and I personally much prefer driving a vehicle one-footed, especially if you're in traffic, not having to get off and on. A brake pedal is great.
Definitely.
So definitely one thing a lot of our listeners are interested in is a lot of SPACs. There seems to be a lot of EVs merging with SPACs. Could you kind of touch on why specifically you are merging with a SPAC and maybe why specifically Gig in specific?
Certainly. So one of the things I think that most people know at a macro level about a SPAC is it's faster. And it's faster in two ways. One of them is it's faster in the sense that essentially by the time we start looking for a SPAC to merge with, the SPAC has already done an IPO. So all the work of an S1 and all the legal work around getting the IPO done and finding the investors is done by the time we started looking for a SPAC. So you shave off about 6 months of the process of going public. But the other thing that is, I'll kind of say fast about it, but unique and certainly unique to the EV space is if you're a very fast growing company, In a traditional IPO, you can only talk about last quarter, last year's revenue. You cannot talk about forward-looking revenue. So if you're at the cusp or right at the precipice of seeing extraordinary growth, it's difficult to get the credit for that kind of opportunity where you're at in the timing of that opportunity in a traditional IPO. Whereas in a SPAC, because it's seen as a merger, the private company is merging with a public company. The private company and the public company together can talk about the private company's future. And this is true whether it's a SPAC or whether it's a traditional public company buying a private company. In both of those cases, both parties can talk about their future. And so in the case of EVs, where we're truly on this cusp where, especially in the commercial EV space where we're going from what has historically been in the United States, about 1,000 trucks and buses, commercial vehicles total a year, to what I believe this year, Lightning alone has orders for twice that, and
Wow.
going into the next year, 3 times that, and certainly there's a lot of other people in different segments of the commercial vehicle market with big orders as well. And so the market is clearly at that tipping point and really going crazy. And so the opportunity with a SPAC to talk about that future is compelling, and a big reason why you see so many companies in the EV space and in other spaces that are on a big growth trajectory using it rather than a traditional IPO.
Definitely.
Could you just yesterday there was a headline came out with you guys delivering first all-electric motor coach to ABC companies with over an order for 200 zero-emission vehicles. Could you kind of touch on that and what that means for you all?
Certainly. So if you look a bit, ABC isn't necessarily a household name, but they're a very large company. They are one of the largest motor coach providers in the United States. Part of their customer base, or a big part of their customer base, are campuses. And a lot of times when you say campus, you think of a college campus, which is certainly a market. But the other significant campus is corporate campuses. And so if you've ever been, for example, I was recently, right before COVID, so I guess that isn't recent anymore, but I was at the Google campus talking to Google, and they have 500 motor coaches every day, luxury motor coaches transporting employees around that Silicon Valley campus in Northern California. And so these are very common luxury vehicles, like I said, that many of us think about in terms of an over-the-road Greyhound bus, or we think about it in terms of a college campus. But there's a large number of these corporate campus buses, coaches, shuttle buses, vans, transporting employees. Obviously, there's the other side we think about a lot, special events, football games, that sort of thing, where you see these coaches. So widely used vehicles. I like it because I like the big stuff and I liked an engineering challenge. And in electrification, the bigger the vehicle, the more nuanced and the harder the engineering challenge is for a variety of ways. So we like that part. But also there's a lot of, on the motor coach side, a lot of accessorization or accessories that are really interesting to electrify. And you think about the fact that motor coach has a bathroom on board. You think about the fact that it has, 3 channels of Wi-Fi on board. And so I liked the platform. It was exciting from an engineering standpoint. We were able to leverage our knowledge of what we've done on transit buses and our knowledge of what we've done on shuttle buses and scale it up, but use our platform of modular software and hardware to do it in a very fast fashion. But again, this is one of the really dramatic ones. To the question earlier, when you get on this bus, you immediately notice the difference as a passenger, immediately notice the difference as a driver, smoother, quieter, everything running the way it does. And where you also notice is when you get in a parking lot, if you've been to one of these corporate campuses, you'll see these buses all sitting around idling all the time. They're big diesels. They leave them idling to keep the air conditioning on or the heating on. As an electric vehicle, they don't idle anymore at all. So you don't smell those fumes in these parking lots and in these parking areas. If you've been to a football game, same thing, you smell all those buses just sitting there idling. With an electric bus, it's not, its definition of idling is it's just running the heat and the air conditioning off the electric. So it's really a unique change, and a lot of things change about it that I really, really like and I'm passionate about from both an engineering standpoint and a usability, really innovating and changing people's experience.
Yeah, I went to school in the SEC, so I can definitely imagine like how much it'll change when they're all electric. But you just mentioned how you were talking about that at a campus right before COVID, and COVID's been a super interesting time for last mile deliveries, especially. And you guys specialize a lot in that. How do you think it will change as COVID ends, or do you think it'll kind of still increase and stay on this trajectory?
So I think we'll see a bit of a leveling off. I don't think it'll go down. I think we'll see the acceleration curve not continue at the same rate. To your point, Dan, we saw extraordinary acceleration curve as people moved to buying online, not just Amazon, where a lot of that obviously had been going on for a while. Where we saw a big acceleration was things like grocery deliveries, where a lot of people hadn't done grocery delivery and other things like that they historically still went and bought pet food and groceries. Many people did. And so there's been big acceleration in the non-UPS, DHL, Amazon business per se. So we see a lot of new kinds of truck demand in last mile delivery. When you think about people who are doing grocery store delivery, there's a lot of people today working with us on both semi-autonomous activities as well as on unique trucks, where the truck has a very unique truck box or body that allows you to load up groceries faster and keeps them cool longer, and this sort of unique application, as opposed to what's kind of gone on in the interim of delivering these groceries in a car. So we see real growth in some unique ways that people haven't seen hit the road yet, but we see earlier on with people looking at new kinds of vehicles. And again, because we support so many platforms, we can support very quickly these customers wanting to do something unique. For example, building a custom box on the top of a Ford Transit chassis. And so we see a lot of that. And I believe we'll continue to see, as COVID winds down, people prefer to buy online and have their groceries delivered. So I don't see that going away, but the acceleration curve may start to level. What we see, though, is also the other side of our business, which I call last mile people delivery. So we kind of have last mile goods delivery and last mile people delivery, and that's the coaches and the shuttle buses, and we do both. But what we see happening is where the coaches and shuttle buses went dormant, this order you saw yesterday and that many more are coming, is about these campuses starting to open up again and saying, you've seen it with universities and you'll see it now with corporations saying, hey, with COVID beginning to wind down, they're all going to start opening their campus, but many of them are going to still support social distancing on these vehicles. So they actually need a lot more coaches and shuttles than they needed before in terms of volume. More seats total, more seats spread out. And many of them are using this downtime opportunity they've had to electrify that platform before they all go back to work. So we're excited about that and seeing a real tick up in business on the last mile people delivery side too.
Yeah, so I'm really happy that that you mentioned the campuses again on the corporate side. Earlier you mentioned Google. Will we see Google on your partner list soon?
I'll say this. I think you'll see virtually every large customer on our partner list, every large campus on our partner list. And I'm not saying that arrogantly or obnoxiously, but what we see happening is there's a real sincere, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons didn't have a lot of sincerity. They wanted to be green and said they wanted to be green, but there wasn't a lot of sincerity to it. Now, today, their employees especially, but also their customers, are pushing them to be sincere. And the idea that you can say I'm green and have all these 500 diesel buses that these employees ride on sitting outside idling, producing all this smoke in a very close campus, it's pretty clear you don't even have, this doesn't have to be a nuanced discussion about greenhouse gas, just the air pollution and the health implications alone are very significant, and the employees get it, and the customers get it, and the communities get it. So the demand side on campuses and these corporate campuses is very significant, and we're seeing it, and we're well positioned because no one else has, especially a repowered a product like the Coach. We're the only people who have a Class 3 electric passenger van also. So we're well positioned to get that business. But I will also say, those campuses, as they electrify, you'll hear other people talk about getting business from them too. And that's healthy for the industry. So I'm definitely not claiming I'll be the only one, but I definitely expect to be a key partner to all those groups, and absolutely in talks with all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a huge part of your business was the fact that you guys really were, we talk about it first to market. You just touched on, that you were the only that, Lightning eMotors is the only ones to have a class 3. So you guys own, I forget the exact number, but about 50% of the market share right now.
Correct.
So, obviously competition, and I know you guys talk a lot about, that you won't be the sole, everyone's going to have multiple, everyone's going to have multiple customers, but how do you kind of see the market share changing, as, you have Ford, although Ford has no plans right now, other competition as they arise, how do you really see, Lightning keeping that market share?
So I wake up every day and I think, I've watched you all's podcast. You all are competitive guys too. And so I wake up every day, thinking about who's chasing behind me and making sure they don't get ahead. And so does my team. So obviously part of it is a drive and a leadership that we want to stay ahead. Part of it is keeping track of what customers want. But I think we've had two key advantages that will continue to drive us. One of them is really listening to the customers. And because unlike the traditional truck market and vehicle market to date, and I think when you look at passenger cars, like what Tesla did, they had the same thing. When you sell direct to customers and you spend your time talking to customers, you have a key first mover advantage because you get to hear firsthand what they want, what they need. You get to develop those relationships. You get to develop a customer intimacy with them in terms of serving their needs and making sure they're taken care of. And even though it's business to business, those relationships, these fleets rely on these vehicles, sometimes 7x24. The people who run these fleets, it's their reputation at risk. They can't have accidents. They can't have downed vehicles. And so you develop a very close relationship and a trust. And we've had the chance, first mover, to develop that trust over the last 3 years. And that obviously gives us a real leg up, but it's also given us a leg up in terms of understanding what they want and what they need. And so we're the first people, that the grocery stores have come talk to when they said, hey, we want to develop a new kind of electric delivery vehicle. We're right there with them and we're able to be at the front end of that. Whereas historically, the folks in the commercial truck and bus business, it was a dealer who was talking to a customer who would then talk to an outfitter and go see that. So sometimes the customer and the manufacturer are 3 or 4 times removed from each other. And in our case, we've been very close. So that we'll continue to do that. We're very committed to a very high level of customer touch on service, on support, but also on product, the way we put the features into the product and what we do with the product. So that's part of it. The other part is we're going to continue to find, part of our vision and ethos is to find the markets where other people don't necessarily want to play. And so you look at commercial vehicles in general, and you think about things like an ambulance or a motor coach or a shuttle bus. There's not enough of them made to attract a lot of them. And that's one of the reasons Ford has never made shuttle buses, because there's 13 to 20,000 made a year, and it's not enough to match Ford's approach of really high volume manufacturing. So we've purposefully chosen these markets where other people's business model doesn't fit well, doesn't work well, and we can not only maintain it, and most of them don't even want to play in our space, but if they do play in our space, we have the home field advantage. We know how to play in this medium volume. It's not super high volume. It's not super automated, but it's not one-off either. And so we're really focused on staying with our knitting and what we're great at. And other people aren't great at it. It's hard for other people to just come in and be great at it. And we're going to continue to excel in those spaces.
Yeah, you just touched on your service. You've mentioned before about how you have white glove treatment for your customers, and I think that is super important because I've been considering getting an electric vehicle as well. And you mentioned sometimes it takes 2 to 3 weeks on the service. How do you guys perform that differently, especially with working with such different vehicles?
So part of it is obviously having a more specialized business model. So versus selling to a passenger vehicle where you have a lot of consumers, we have a much more limited, and we'll always have a much more limited number of customers. So we have a few large customers as opposed to lots of, single vehicle customers. So some of our customers have, 100,000 vehicles. And so we are growing with them and will continue to grow with them. And so that specialization of playing in business to big business means we can cater to that. And so we have a team here and a growing team here of service personnel that we dispatch immediately to customers. So some of it is about just what you plan on. Do you have enough people to dispatch immediately and service it? Another part of it, which has been true in the electric passenger space too, is all about telematics and analytics. So we literally have a team here looking at a network operations center with all the vehicles and all the telematics for the vehicles live every second. And those telematics tell us things like there's a drop in pressure across the coolant system, and we know therefore that there's a leak, and we're able to proactively call a customer and say, hey, we've got a leak in the cooling system. We'll send a team out. Please ground the truck when it comes back to depot tonight. And so there's stuff like that because we have very sophisticated telematics and analytics that we can do that aren't traditional. But the other side is just simply having the staff and the ethos and the commitment that that's the way we're going to do. When a customer calls, we're going to drop everything and take care of them. And that's obviously, it's not only what you want to do, but then you have to have the staff and the people and the travel arrangements and the ability to get out to those customers. And then it's about scaling that. So we're signing agreements today with very serious partners who already have people in the field who can augment what we're doing. We're also almost daily signing up independent shops near our customers or our customers' own fleet service groups and training them through video and even virtual reality video training on how to service these vehicles and how to support them themselves. So it's an entire ecosystem around how to make sure it's done. But it's a commitment from our side, recognizing we're working with fleet customers who uptime is their business. They're making money every minute this vehicle's on the road, and they're not making money if it's not. So it's just kind of a different model in that sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, the saying when it comes to you guys is that the money's in the niches. And, you kind of talked about scalability. Right now, if we look at the beautiful warehouse behind you, virtually behind you, I know you guys have a pretty big campus that you're scaling into, if you will. But can you kind of touch on, I think at some point, if correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, you guys, your entire employees do the entire, manufacturing. It's really not that much automation. Where if you went to like a Ford, you would see, way more automation. So when you get to a certain point inside the scalability, do you think that you will have to or will go more towards automation? Because I think one of the videos that I saw on YouTube, you guys had 3 or 4 people putting together a van. So, can you kind of touch on how you see that going, or are you guys going to be completely employee based, moving forward?
Yeah, automation is very important to us personally. And again, that's just kind of something, longtime mechanical engineer. I love machines, so I'm excited about automation. One of the challenges with automation, though, is you design automation, you want to know, and this is true with most process, how to do it manually first. And you've got to kind of perfect that side. And so we've spent some time perfecting how do these things happen from a manual basis with artisan, people putting it together. But we are and have been actively now designing automation, but it does take time. And when you see many of the people out there say, hey, we're going to have an automated factory, it takes a year or two sometimes to get the equipment in, because a lot of it's custom built, custom designed based on what you did manually. And then it has to be custom software developed. So we're in that queue right now in the middle of doing that. I find it a very exciting time because it's fun. And I think everybody who saw the dancing robots, on social media recently, it's just hard not to get excited about where it's going. But I think it's also important to note that there will still be artisans involved too, because we aren't fully, there still won't be hundreds of thousands of units of each one unit a year. So there's still a combination in our factory of automation that's, a variety of robots that do everything from and automation. Sometimes it's not a robot. Sometimes it might be as simple as a conveyor belt that's handling your material transport from, the cage to the assembly line. But other times it is very sophisticated pick and place robots or sophisticated material handling robots. We are placing orders for them. We're designing to that. But you'll still see some amount of artisan activity in the business. You might liken it to a specialty car manufacturer that is making some volume, like Ferrari, where they have some volume. And when you see YouTube of their factory, we see ourselves in that same kind of way, where you have a mixture of very sophisticated artisan people doing some of it, and a mixture of robots doing parts of it too that can be sophisticatedly automated. Now, the other nice part is robots are coming down in price, and the software side, there's more and more of them that, like us, kind of come pre-programmed, and so it is becoming more practical to add automation. Now, the flip side of that is I hear a lot of people say, "Hey, is that going to eliminate jobs?" And what it does mean is jobs are changing. So, we don't see it eliminating jobs per se, but what it has done is take a job that was a low tech job and made it a high tech job. And I think that's the tough part for people watching the video is, what do you do about a career? And the answer is, there's going to be fewer and fewer low tech jobs, because anything that can be easily done without having to put a lot of thought to it will likely be done in an automated way in the very near future. But things that require, more sophisticated thought and approach are going to remain people type activities. And so we as a culture and a society have to think about how do we get people educated to make sure they continue to stay employed. But the total number of jobs, we still see a very significant growing economy in what we're doing. But the jobs are certainly shifting from hand jobs to software jobs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely get that. And I guess, do you guys kind of have a timeline for, you guys are growing. I was looking at, some of the things that you talked about, and obviously, until you guys really go public, all of your numbers aren't out there yet per se. But, do you guys kind of have a timeline for where you really see yourself in 3 years, kind of like the numbers that you're doing? I know that you said that, and this is definitely a longer game, being that, you take orders for a year, 2 years out. Where do you kind of see your, Lightning in 2 to 3 years? And then, this will kind of be like a two-part question. How does, the SPAC, how does that kind of play into, your scaling for Lightning? And does that kind of push up the timeline of some of the things that you had in mind before?
Sure. So I'll start with your last question. And yes, the SPAC's done two things. One of them is obviously provide a significant amount of capital infusion and working capital infusion, which has a very big accelerating effect, because we've been up till now very limited on capital. And so when you think about how are you going to automate the factory, you've got to spend money on robots and you have to spend money on automation. We didn't have a lot of capital to do that before. Now we do. Same thing with people, being able to add a large number of people reasonably quickly and add the facility space we need reasonably quickly and add the demonstration vehicles and the other assets reasonably quickly. So the SPAC, obviously going public does that part. But the other part is Gig Capital 3 that we partnered with for the SPAC. They've taken multiple companies public. This is their third IPO, public company they've done. But prior to that, the executives there had taken other companies public and run public companies. So that having them now on our team, on our board every day, I'm talking to that group virtually every day. Having their team of experts has really helped us accelerate what is it like to be a public company? What do you have to do to be ready? Because there's a lot of back office and regulatory things that have to be done. And so they've helped us accelerate that in a very meaningful way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So for me, Penny's going in raw. We are big on goals here. I've watched a good bit of yours, and I have some of your goals that you have listed. And I'd like you to touch on some of them. The first one, manufacturing capabilities. You have a current 1,000 annual units, and you want it at 20,000 annual units by 2025. How's that goal going?
Very well. So three parts to that. One of them is a facility part, and we're lucky enough to be on a facility that has 1 million square feet ready. So we don't have to build a new building. But the other part is we've also made significant progress with partners. So two sides of our business: when we're making a complete electric vehicle, we also have another side of the business where we sell powertrains to strategic partners who install those powertrains either in a new vehicle or a repowered vehicle. We need a lot less facility space in the latter. If we're just building a powertrain, it's much more efficient facility-wise. And we've recently signed up 3 new partners whose business it is to take powertrains from us and install them at their factory. And so that gives us nice leverage and growth leverage. So I feel very, very confident about the scale side of our ability to manufacture. And then to the other questions there, our ability to leverage automation. So, because there's kind of 2 parts. One of them is just raw scale, get more facility, get more partners, get more supply chain. And that's largely a function of capital. And we have that, and we're doing that and making the decisions. The other part of it is automation. And that is happening as well. And so we expect to get about a 3-to-1 facilities benefit and people benefit from automation that we were talking about, from, whether you think about it as robots or conveyor belts. I kind of use that as 2 extremes, and there's a lot in between, like robotic welding and other things that allow you to do things faster and more repeatedly and more more accurately.
All right, goal number 2. Become number 1 in medium duty urban electric vehicles. I think one of the things you mentioned was you want Lightning eMotors, that logo, on just about all, like, mail, ambulances, all of them. Can you kind of touch on the opportunity of partnering with one of those bigger package delivery firms or maybe ambulances, and how you're going to adjust to their needs to kind of make sure you get that?
Right. So you'll see announcements from us, because some of it's been in the works for over a year now, or some cases 2 years, with many of these groups in terms of developing the partnership. And there's 2 aspects to it. One of them is really catering to the specifics. And, in last mile delivery, it's generally, most people don't think of that as highly custom, although there is some customization there. But then you get to ambulances, and they're very much highly customized. And so a little differences in both of those, but our ability and agility to say, we're going to do the customization, the engineering work that needs to be done, isn't trivial, in the sense that there's both, we need the expertise and we have the engineering expertise, but you also have to have the people and the availability. And many of the big customers, big OEMs out there, don't have spare engineering right now to do this work. And we've ramped up our engineering and have the engineering talent to do the work. And this is, what we're passionate about, what we're good at, what we love. So very important to note, I think, in terms of that, how do we do that? But I think when we see taking over, really continuing our growth and being the number 1, part of it is having more sectors that we're serving. And so we're excited to be bringing on ambulances, excited to bring on, some other nuances like bucket trucks and tow trucks and some of these other nuanced markets that are still reasonably sized, not big enough for, a large OEM to want to go make the investments in, but certainly big enough for us to build a good business, in many cases, a nearly $1 billion business in each of those markets. So we're continuing to build and expand new platforms like tow trucks and et cetera. But then also continuing to build faster and better and more feature-rich products. So our telematics, our analytics, the software and dashboard that's in the vehicle that shows you how the vehicle's performing, and that what we call human-machine interface. All those things are important, and where we're, in the background, running like hamsters on the treadmill, trying to get all those things done as well. And some of them are already there. When people drive our vehicle, they've already got a very unique one-off, set of screens and dashboard experience. But there's a lot of opportunity to continue to make that better. And because we've now got a lot of vehicles with fleet customers giving us feedback, that feedback loop allows us to do some very unique things. Whereas people who don't have a vehicle on the road aren't in that feedback loop yet. So they don't have the customers telling them, well, I drove it and this is my experience. And so those are all aspects to how we stay in front and accelerate in front now that we have capital as a public company.
Okay,
that's awesome.
And last but not least on your goals, and this is we actually have this goal, and we both have this goal. You said profitable in 2022. We also want to be green in 2022. How are we doing it?
Again, very much on track. I originally thought that, we'd get it done in 2021, and it got pushed back because of COVID, supply chain, et cetera. But there's three parts to that are key. One of them is the new supply chain. And supply chain's a two-factor. One of them is it had to mature for all of us. And so one of the challenges in the commercial truck space is from an electrification standpoint, there's a lot of electrification components out there, but many of them are owned somewhat exclusively by one passenger vehicle group who has been in the business a long time and has built them and vertically integrated themselves. So when we got in it really started heavy electrification 3 years ago, a lot of the components we needed didn't exist or had a 2-year lead time. So you'd call up and say, I want to order it. You'd see it in a catalog, you'd see it's available, but you'd ordered it and it takes 2 weeks to get, or 2 years to get it. So part of what we've had to do is make some of our own components and vertically integrate a lot of things ourselves. And obviously COVID exasperated that because some things we were buying all of a sudden would get delayed 8 weeks or 12 weeks when the supplier shut their factory down. So part of this profitability has come from us making it, doing vertical integration and owning and making a lot of our own components. Part of it, though, is also coming from volume. And so you can imagine exactly to the question about automation, when you're doing one or two and they're all manual and it's all artisan labor, it's expensive. When your batch size goes up to a couple hundred, and you can automate everything from how the material gets to the floor to the pick and place of various components, but also even the artisans that are working on it are far, far more efficient because their tools are already ready and batch loaded, and they've done it enough times to be good at it. I use the example of if you've ever put together more than one IKEA desk, the first one takes a long time. You get to number 2 or number 3, you get better at it, a lot better at it.
I'm at number 10 and I'm still breaking stuff. I'm still up till 1 a.m. doing it the next day.
It does get better though, but yes.
Yeah. So Tim, speaking on the financial side of it, I think one of the big things that a lot of investors, want to know, you got this huge capital infusion. Where do you see that capital? Because, profitability is still, at least a year out. Where do you see that capital taking you, and how long will that capital last you until, you either need to look for more financing options or you need to raise?
So we have designed the business to be able to get to profitability without raising more money. Now, I'll say that with one caveat that I can't go deep into, but I believe there will be a lot of acquisition opportunities for us to grow the business and to begin to consolidate some of what right now is kind of a convoluted story in the commercial vehicle space. Whether you look at things like AI and autonomous driving in this space and the technology around that, whether you look at specific components or even vehicle manufacturing, and we have an interest in some of that consolidation, both to better tell the story, but also to drive profitability and to drive efficiencies in the market. And so that may change, what the market perceives we need or how we go about future fundraising. But as far as our current business, our projections to get to 20,000 units by 2025, all of that we believe can be done with what we've raised in this public offering and where we're going. So we're very focused on not having to keep going back to the market and raising more money.
Yeah, we like that. We like that a lot. And then obviously most of your business is B2B or business to business. Do you see you guys ever kind of expanding or really, dabbling in C2C or customer to customer? Business to customer at all, or do you really see, inside the next 5 years, just B2B and really kind of cutting out, if I wanted to go and buy a van from you?
So, we don't stop an individual from buying a van, but our business. And so when you think about, so some of the partners we've talked about, like Winnebago, we definitely see consumers buying our electric powertrain Winnebago. So, but where our sales team focuses and our interaction and engagement, I'm certain will continue to be B2B, but that doesn't mean customers won't be able to buy our product. They'll just be buying it from one of our partners. So I do think you'll be able to buy I know you'll be able to buy a electric RV from a partner of ours that will be, powered by Lightning. You'll be able to buy electric vans, powered by Lightning. So we do see more and more of that happening with what we call our OEM business, this business where we build the powertrain and other people, install them and leverage them. So I'm excited to say I do expect consumers to have vehicles powered by Lightning, but I don't expect that the interaction will be directly with Lightning.
Makes sense. Hey, Tim, we want to thank you. We've had fun today.
I've enjoyed it. You guys are great.
Yeah.
We are actually in about half an hour about to go on Benzinga. Is there anything you want us to say about you? Maybe some breaking news, like who knows?
I heard
we'll
you
say
did say you were signing some documents today. Can we get some leverage here?
I'm trying to think if there's anything close enough. So as you guys know, the downside to going public is now there's all these constraints about what has to be already sent to the SEC. So, yes, I have, and that's very difficult for me because I like to share. I want to be able to tell everybody what's going on. And so this is the biggest transition for me in going public is I have to be a lot more careful about what I say. So,
whoa, Tim, we're nice guys. We won't tell anybody. We promise.
I want you to tell somebody though. That's what I love about your podcast. You guys are telling, really getting the message out. So I very much appreciate that. And I think, what we want people to hear is, we are focused. We're in a market that, as you pointed out with the questions, a lot of people think about, hey, some legacy OEM is going to take this over. And I think it's very clear to us that the legacy OEMs don't want to be in our space, but also that we have a real leg up because we're focused on this nuanced space, but that this nuanced space actually has tremendous growth opportunity when you aggregate it all together. And so that's what I hope people get. The other thing we see people being confused about is thinking we're just a retrofitter. We really want people to understand that we make complete vehicles. Yes, we start with a legacy OEM chassis in most cases, but we're really getting the word out that to both customers and investors that we are a complete house. So, and some of the other stuff you did squeeze out a few things that aren't specific to, the automation question you asked, no one else has asked. So that's definitely, we haven't talked about that. So that's definitely an interesting curve that you
breaking news.
Hey, yeah, we got it. We got the breaking news. Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. And, we can't wait to see what Lightning eMotors has for us.
And I'm happy to be on anytime. Just shoot me an email anytime, and I'll join you again anytime, any place.
All right. Thank you so much, man. Take care.
Thanks, gentlemen. Take care.